Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people get mistaken for being workers by some real oblivious people. So be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get right into it, friends. Do I work here or not? This one is kind of different. I was working at Blockbuster as an assistant manager while I was going to school. I would go to classes during the day and work the closing shift. I'm not sure if it was a company or district policy, but they wanted the manager and assistant managers to work a variety of shifts, with each one working at least one opening and one closing shift per week. I had no problem with that, but let the manager know that because of my class schedule, I would only be able to open on the weekend. He was fine with that because no one really wants to open on the weekend anyway. I had been there for about 6 months when we had a manager change. I explained to the new manager about my school schedule and the arrangement with the previous manager. The new manager didn't like that and wanted the assistant managers to have more flexibility. I told her I understood, but I wasn't going to give up school for this job, and gave my 2-week notice. I rarely saw the new manager because she opened on the days that I closed. I worked my normal schedule for the next 2 weeks. A few days before my last day, I looked at the next week's schedule, and I was scheduled for my normal schedule. I enjoyed the job. I got paid a little over minimum wage to talk to people about movies, and it fit my school schedule. The only reason I was leaving was because the new manager wanted me to be more flexible. I thought that maybe the new manager had changed her mind and was willing to be more flexible. Since I had given my notice, I could have left my uniform on the manager's desk and dropped my key in the return box after locking up the store. But since I enjoyed the job, and the schedule I was scheduled fit my schedule, I decided to continue working. The next week, I was still on the schedule. I kept working and I kept getting paid. This happened for about 6 weeks. Then I went into the open store on a Sunday after being off the previous day. I opened the door and went to turn off the alarm. The alarm said I entered the incorrect code, so I entered it again. Same result. After the third attempt, the alarm started going off, and the police were automatically dispatched. I went out front to get away from the wailing sirens and to wait for the police to arrive. When the police arrived, I explained the situation and showed them my lanyard, and showed them that I had the key to the store. I told the officer, "I do work here, lady." The officer wanted to talk to the manager, but since I had only met her the one time, I didn't have her number with me. But I explained to the officer where the schedule book was, and that it had everyone's number in it. She went in and got the book and called the store manager. I could tell the officer was looking concerned as she was talking to the manager. After she got off the phone, she asked me if I wanted to change my story. I said no, that I was just there on my normal shift to open the store. The officer told me that the manager was on her way down, but informed the officer that I used to work there but quit about 6 weeks ago. I nervously laughed and explained the ordeal to the officer. I could tell she didn't believe me until I suggested to look at the schedule. She even commented that I was scheduled for 4 days the upcoming week. The manager finally arrived and talked to the officer. While they were talking, I took off my polo shirt and handed it to the manager, along with my lanyard and the keys to the store. The manager then looked flabbergasted and asked me who was going to close the store next week. The officer and I looked even more flabbergasted, looked at each other, and I replied, "Not me. I don't work here, lady." Man, this is so irritating. This manager has no idea what she's doing. She really just can't make up her mind, can she? "Oh, sorry, I can't accommodate your schedule." "Oh, you're quitting? Okay. I'll keep scheduling you for 6 weeks anyway." "Oh, by the way, cops, OP doesn't work here anymore." "Oh yeah, you're right, manager, I don't work here anymore." "Well then who's gonna close for me?" Like, which is it? Make up your mind already. An infant works in a shop. I went to the range recently with my mom, sister, and 1-year-old nephew. They wanted some of that tablecloth that they cut to size. There was no one at the cutting desk, so my mom went to the front desk while my sister and nephew hovered by the cutting desk, and I got what I wanted. I went back to my sister and nephew and saw this man out of the corner of my eye, and he mutters something under his breath. We pay no attention to him, thinking he's just talking to himself. I pick my nephew up and give him a cuddle. Then we hear the man shout, "I guess I'll have to go and get the manager over to get someone to help me then." We glance over and see he's unloaded all of his shopping out on the cutting desk and is talking to us. Confused, we tell him likely yes, they seem rather understaffed today. He stood there confused and just said, "Well, you're useless, I'll go get him myself." We pointed out the tills and said they're over there. We don't work here. Mom returned with someone who worked there to cut the tablecloth. While they're cutting, a manager comes over and whispers something to the person helping us, and she responds with a confused look on her face, and we just heard her say she hadn't spoken to anyone besides us. We asked if it was about the crazy guy. They confirmed it was, so we told them what had happened. Nothing more was said about it. We paid for our stuff, got overcharged as usual, because that's what the range does. Now, even though OP never says their own age, the fact that they're holding a 1-year-old kid should probably be a good indication that they don't work there. But apparently not for this guy. Man, this guy's situational awareness is really something else. Never mind the fact that he also thought a cutting desk was a till. Absolute genius. Shot down Karen at Ross. As a security guard, I often have to deal with customers from stores. Normally, it's to get them to leave if they are doing something the store doesn't like. But on this one day, I got to tell off an impatient Karen at Ross. So for some backstory, I was stationed as security for a shopping center. And as part of my rounds, when I would first clock in, I would check in with the Ross, as I was always called in to help them with stopping someone from stealing. On this particular day, the store was packed. I was talking to the loss prevention person stationed at the door, checking in to see what manager was in charge for the night, and seeing how the store had been so far. Out of the corner of my eye, I see two ladies standing at the jewelry counter waiting to be helped, and glaring at us. The loss prevention guy informs me that he already called someone to help them, but they just hadn't gotten there yet, as it was slammed and all hands were needed to ring customers out, as the line was almost out the door, it was so long. As we were finishing up our talk, which was only maybe 3 minutes at most, I turned to walk out the door to finish my rounds, when Karen suddenly yells towards me, "Excuse me, I need some help here," in a very rude tone. Not missing a beat, I turn around and look at her. "Ma'am, he already called someone for you." I point to the loss prevention guy. "As you can see, they are swamped and the line is long. Maybe you should grow some patience and learn to wait your turn." I then walked out of the store with the biggest smile on my face, and my inner customer service rep clapping at finally being able to tell a Karen off. No, Vikings did not wear jeans and Reeboks. More of a I'm a real person rather than I don't work here. This happened many years ago when my kids were still interested in stuff like museums. As one of the first UK areas settled by Vikings, York has a museum dedicated to their endeavors when populating this land, Jorvik. There is one section that is a simple mirror maze, used as a transition between two areas, but no artifacts to speak of. I had been separated from my wife and daughter. They got lost, so I found an alcove to wait for them in. As I stood there waiting, 6 foot 18 stone, in a band t-shirt, jeans, and red Reeboks, a group of middle-aged women walked past, chatting to each other. One of them glanced at me and carried on. My wife and daughter were behind, and as I moved to join them, the woman that looked at me spun around, grabbed one of her friends, I can only imagine as a human shield, and after a second of realization, commented that she thought I was a statue. Her panic still entertains me to this day. Karen follows me into the men's restroom. A few weeks ago, I was visiting my local big box bookstore looking for good clearance items before the store closed permanently. The dead mall it was attached to is being demolished. The store has no dress code, but the employees do wear lanyards, and I wasn't. So I was browsing around my preferred sci-fi section when I realized I needed to use the nearby restroom, so I headed in that direction, which happened to also be next to the mid-store customer service counter. Karen notices me, positions herself directly in front of me, and blocking my path to my urinary destination. "I don't know why you don't keep that desk staffed, but I really need your help finding my book. Are you going to help me or not?" "Not," I say, remembering the urgency of my business, and I step around her with the variation of "I don't work here," continuing to my destination, thinking that will be the end of the encounter. It's not to be. I hear her voice rising in pitch and volume, on its way to full Karen Banshee, as she literally follows me into the men's restroom, and I'm convinced she was about to grab my arm and pull me around to face her. Being conscious of social norms about public exposure, I made it into a stall and locked the door for privacy. That didn't stop her from knocking on the door and threatening to get me fired, before she heard the really solid stream hit the water, and I'm convinced, realized for the first time what it was she had done. I heard her embarrassed sounding squeak and huff, and she hightailed it out of there. I finished my thing and washed my hands, and came out to witness her being escorted out of the store by a properly lanyarded employee. I only caught the tail end of the conversation, where Karen stated she was never coming here again, and the employee had a classic response: "Neither am I, we're closing." Bumper cars. I'm picking up a few items at what must be the worst run everything store I've ever seen. I was in the produce section heading for the coffee. There was a man in a disability scooter surrounded by carts that had been shoved every which way. He was wearing a vet's cap with the name of a ship. It was obvious he couldn't just jump up and move them, and he was starting to get that look. You know the one, let me become invisible. I made my way over and asked when the place had turned into bumper cars. I didn't take long to put them in a line out of his way. I said it looked like he was a vet. He was. I said, "Happy to have met you, sir. I salute." He laughed, looked a lot happier. 2 aisles later, he was waiting behind a blue monstrosity. I laughed and said I needed bigger equipment for this one. He said no worries, someone would be along in a minute. And they were. We met up once more at checkout, waving and smiling. No tips for being a cart handler, but his smile was priceless. That was some years ago, and I'm now in the scooter. I can walk a bit, but not far. I could move a cart if I have to. I have a better appreciation for his dilemma, and his smile stayed with me a long time. That's going to be it for today's stories. Thanks for watching. Be sure to drop a like and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And with that, I'm out of here, so have an awesome day and I'll see you next time.